and welcome to the Abundology podcast. I'm excited today to talk with Marli Williams, who is an epic facilitator. Yay!
Love it.
I've heard nothing but great things about you and how you have elevated people's presentations and helped them be better facilitators. And we have certainly all been at events that were horrible. And we, because the facilitating wasn't great. And then you kind of miss the whole message of what people have to say because of that. So it's lovely to talk with you today.
I'm so stoked. I can geek out about talking about facilitation for days. So I'm so happy to be here. And so, like exactly what you're saying is like, we've all been to these workshops, events, and the content can be great. But if the person who's delivering that isn't epic, right? They're not creating engagement. They're not playing with the audience. They're not inspiring people or catalyzing them to what's possible in their life. Like it's all about the energy, right? And I love what you said. It's about helping leaders up-level their skills and master their craft. And I really see facilitation as this art and science and skill and craft, if you will, that I am constantly upping my game to create the transformation that I want to create in the world. Like that's what it's about.
Well, and I think that sometimes if you've done presentations before or events, it can be nerve-wracking. I mean, the person putting it on, you can feel a little nervous and, not enjoy it as much. And so not only are the people there not getting as much out of it as they could, you're not getting as much out of it as you could.
So true. Yeah. And I think that, so a lot of like facilitation training stuff out there it's like, here's this activity or here's this exercise, and it's very external. And if you just take a random activity and you plug it into your event, it might not actually be what's the most helpful, right? And so it's the inner game of like, who am I being as this facilitator, and almost being an epic facilitator as a journey of personal growth, personal transformation. Who am I in the world to get up in front of a room? And when I teach people these facilitation techniques and skills, it actually creates more ease. It's easier to facilitate than it is to speak at an audience and have a one-sided conversation because all the pressure's on you. Yep. Versus this idea of co-creating with your audience. And that requires trusting yourself, trusting the people in the room, trusting your message. And, that our intuition is our inspiration, like speaking through us. And the more present we can be, the more connected we can be to that. Like there's just this like unique experience, a unique organic experience that can happen versus this very rigid, contrived, overly scripted talk, if you will.
Yeah, and it feels nice that society is moving away from more of the let me talk to you than the authentic engagement, I think, is where we're going and what you teach. Yes. So it's not only great for the person facilitating, but it's better for everybody there. So I love that we're finally up-leveling our events.
Yes. And that's what it's about. And it's like, if people are going to give me like their time, their money, their attention, like I want to blow their minds. Like I want to rock their world. I want it to matter. I want them to leave feeling like that was worth it. So it's like, it's really about being of service to our audience. And I think that the interesting thing is there's so many people I meet that are coaches or speakers, and they go to coach training school to become a one-on-one coach, or they do some sort of public speaking where they go to Toastmasters or something like that. And facilitation, I often talk about, it's the blend of those two worlds. It's the blend of coaching. It's the blend of speaking. It's like, how do I ask powerful questions? How do I hold space for transformation? But no one is actually taught how to do that. It's fascinating to me. So many people are doing it, and they're doing what they've seen other people do because they've been to so many events, but they've never actually learned the principles, the philosophies, why certain things work. Things like adult learning theory or experiential education, the power of reflection, the importance of integration, all of these things. We're just taught like the more content, the better, right? Like, and it's like connection over content is one of my like mantras, right? If people aren't connected to you, they're not connected to each other, and they're not connected to themselves, they're not going to connect to your content, right? So it's so layered and it's so nuanced. And when you see someone who's so good at it, it's so, it looks so easy. It looks so effortless.
It looks
and
so
there's
easy.
so much happening behind the scenes, you know?
Well, and then they just pull it off, similar to like a play. You know, you go to see a play
Right.
and it's like, wow, this is fantastic, but you have no idea what went on behind the scenes to get them
Right.
to that point. Yeah,
Totally.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how have events changed now since we're in the time of COVID and everything has moved online to Zoom? Is it similar principles or?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of similar principles, and I've actually been sharing with the students in the Epic Facilitator Academy. It's actually a lot. I think it's harder to be epic online. Like,
Yeah.
because when we're in person, we feed off of the energy that like this energy that gets generated when people are in the same room together. That isn't the experience when people are isolated. They're in their own world. They're in their own space where we have this screen in front of us. And so I talk about like, you have to like bring it. And that means you have to set the tone. You have to bring the energy, and you can't rely on this reading the room. Like, oh, it's like hard to read the room on Zoom kind of thing. And I'm like,
Yeah.
stop trying to read the room. Like, bring the energy you want to bring. And I talk about this idea of acting as if. Like, acting as if you are speaking to a room of 500 people and they are hanging on every word you're saying. Who would you be being in that moment? Right? Like, and really elevating your energy such that it like comes through the screen and you create this 3D experience for them, that they feel you. And someone, again, like, we overemphasize the content, like, oh, I need to have all of this content figured out. And really it's about you being, you know, connected with yourself, connected with your audience such that it lands. And there's a lot of similar principles around, you know, I use things like the unofficial start. So instead of, you know, if your Zoom call or starts at 3 p.m., you open the room at 2:50 and you ask some questions, you connect with people, you know, do these things like just as you'd open the room a half an hour early and you'd greet people in the room, and you'd do these sorts of like, I call it the unofficial start, to get people to really just land there. And then the power of reflection and engagement. Engagement online is so critical so that people don't feel like they're just being these passive participants of the experience and just like sitting there watching some PowerPoint slide, but you're actually using the tools that we have, using the chat box, using breakout rooms, using these different things such that people feel like they're actively involved in that experience. And so there are these principles of epic facilitation that just get transferred into this virtual world. So yeah, there are ways to do it for sure. You know, and I think it's harder because then we have the technology barrier. You know, so I've used Zoom for the past like 5 years probably, or ever since it came out. And some people have never used it before, right? So that creates this whole new learning curve.
Well, and there's so many great things about Zoom that I honestly didn't know till I was on a meeting with you maybe a month or so ago. And
Yeah.
It's like breakout rooms. I had no idea we could do this. You know, I had no idea you could play music. So there's so many different things that you can do to break the monotony too, where you're right. You're not just looking at a screen, you know, with 100 different heads on it, bored out of your mind.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like really, I mean, switching up the energy, right? Because it's like our attention spans are very low. And if it's not engaging, guess what? There's 18 other things that are going to be more engaging. Your phone,
isn't that the truth?
Facebook, you know, like there's going to be other things. So, you know, one of my things that I say with in-person events and now even with virtual events is I want to create an experience where people forget that anything else is going on. Or people forget they have a phone, where they don't even want to check their email. And it's like, that is my responsibility. It's up to me to create that experience that almost, it's like, what's the container that I'm creating? What's the experience that I'm creating? And it's all about that intention. You know, what are we here to do? and not just going through the motions, being like, here's another PowerPoint slide, here's another this, here's another that. And again, you can have the best content ever, but if you seem bored, other people are going to be bored.
Right. You know, that is honestly one of the reasons I used to do a lot of talks about company culture and business and that sort of thing. And I got to be honest with you, I am bored to death of it. So I've been asked a couple times recently, and it's like, thank you, but no. No, I don't want to talk about that anymore. Totally. But a lot of people, when that's their bailiwick and that's what they've been doing for a long time, and then they show up with that stale energy that maybe 10 years ago they were done with this topic, but here they find themselves still talking about it. So is the best place to start, or maybe the first place you start, with the intention?
Yeah.
Just like everything else in life?
Just like everything else in life, right? Like, I think about that intention or that purpose. What is your true north? Like, as a facilitator, it's like, how do you want people to feel when they walk out the room, right? When they leave the Zoom room, I want them to feel more alive, more energized, instead of feeling, we're talking about Zoom fatigue, and people walk away feeling like, oh, that was just a waste of an hour, or that was a waste of time, or I feel so tired, right? How do you want people to feel? And so there's these levels of intention that I talk about in my work, where what is your intention for yourself, right? And so that's like, who am I being? How do I want to show up? Like, I want to show up. My intention is I show up and play full out, bring my level 10 energy. Like, that is my intention. And what is my intention for my audience? That they walk away feeling moved, inspired, and ready to take action in some area of their life. And then what is my intention for my business? Is there an end result? Am I, making an invitation into a program or into an experience with me, or to continue working with me in some way, all right? Or is it just to build that know, like, and trust factor, right? Or my intention is to build my confidence. And I think that one of the brilliant things about virtual experiences is that there's no overhead. When you think about leading an in-person event, you're paying for the space, maybe you're paying for the food, you're driving there, people are driving there, like, it might cost, and even on the low end, $100 or $200 to put on a 2-hour workshop on the low end. And here I can test things out. I can test out a title, a description. Are people, like, if people aren't going to show up online, it's probably likely that they're not going to show up in person, right? So it's this, like, low threshold for, like, use this time to find your voice, to find your message. And, like, you can make it free. And I've even done these webinars where it's like $10 and 100 people show up. And I'm like, sweet, I just made $1,000, but it was a low investment for them. It was a win-win. And, like, I just think that no one had to leave their house. And there were people from all over the world. That's one of the cool things about virtual events, I think, right now, is that it's not limited geographically to only people that live here in Portland, which is where I live, but, like, anyone from anywhere could be on a Zoom call. And it's so cool, right?
Well, and it immediately increases your market, because because being in Portland, we have a limited market in our heads. We think this, but if you're on the internet, you have almost 7 billion people now, that may be interested. So the importance, I want to go back a little bit and talk about the importance of your energy, because that is how we're attracting people. And if you are attracting them online and putting out that energy, then you now have the ability to attract from these 7 billion people, and you immediately, for almost no cost, increase your audience.
Yeah, it's so true. And I talk about that, like, the energy of even how you're inviting people into, like, to the webinar, to the workshop, whatever it is, like, that you become a magnet, like, people are just drawn to you, right? And I think about, versus so much of the time, there's this, like, constant fear of, is anyone going to come? Is anyone going to sign up? And that's energetically, as we talk about, like, abundance mindset and all this stuff, it's like, I'm holding the space for people to show up. And it's like, who do I need to be in order for people to be knocking at my door and, like, have a wait list? And it's me trusting that what I have to say, what I have to share, it's something that people want. And so I have to trust myself in that, and the energy that I generate for myself, it gets magnified, right? And it's like, how do people share, talk about you behind your back, or you create this community of raving fans so that people are sharing and they're talking about it. Oh, you got to check this out. You got to check this out. Right. So I think that is the essential piece is it's all about your energy. Like, and I know that you know this because of the work that you do.
Yes, totally.
Your energy, your mindset, how you're showing up,
Yes.
online, and, all of that. It's huge, critical.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go a little bit more woo right now, because a few years ago, it hit me, how we get these aha moments.
Totally.
Like, oh, this is how we use the internet. So so in a sense, we are uploading our energy to the internet, and we're allowing it to spread our energy around the world. So I love the idea of being so much more intentional of what we're uploading, what we're literally putting out into the universe.
Yes.
And I sometimes think that we aren't aware of that on our day-to-day lives. Of every day when you're online and you're putting maybe crappy stuff on social media, that's the vibe that you're sending out there.
Yeah. Right
now, especially, I think we're in a time where we can make tremendous change, and we see it, in social media, on Instagram and Facebook right now, of all of this change happening, and that is the energy going up into the universe. So I just had to get a little energy woo stuff in there.
I love it. I love it. And so, and it's just being mindful of what are the thoughts, right? What are the thoughts, the beliefs, the stories? Again, that story, like no one's going to come, or is it going to be good enough, or all of that fear. It's fear-based marketing, or like fear-based thoughts that lead to people not putting out a live video, not putting a post, not even inviting people to their workshop. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Not having people pay, or feeling like, oh, even $10. Like, I'm like, just charge $10. Like, people will, the people that want to show up will show up. And that's the other thing of not trying to be everything for everyone, right? Not everyone's going to get it. Not everyone's going to like it. And that's okay. But it's giving yourself permission to like be fully expressed, to share your message. And again, like create, I think Amy Porterfield said this at some point, where she was like, it's all about who you're being, not when you're launching, right?
Yes.
Not when you're trying to promote something, but like, who am I being, and how am I creating these relationships, and seeing it as like, these are relationships that I'm building with people over time, building that community, building that know, like, and trust factor. And it takes time to do that. And being willing to show up and put in that time, and do the work, right? Like, if we have medicine to share, if we have a message that's going to help people, I would imagine like we want to like shout it from the rooftops,
Yes.
And it takes time. It takes practice to get good at it too, right?
Yes.
And seeing it as a practice.
And I think of like Jerry Seinfeld or some of the comedians, they don't just go out and do their Netflix special, and hit it.
Right.
They've been practicing for months in, small little comedy clubs and stuff. It's a similar thing. And I think sometimes people have unrealistic expectations. Like, this is the first time I'm doing this. And it's like, oh my goodness, the first time, great.
Yes.
The 10th time, you fucking nailed it.
Right.
So,
I had a speaker coach one time tell me, he's like, your first 100 talks are gonna suck. And he's like, they're not gonna suck to the audience, they're gonna suck to you, because you know what's possible. You know that you could do better. But like, there's no way to get to that 100th talk without doing the 99. Like, there's no way. And so it's like that expectation and that pressure that people put on themselves for it to be like the best thing ever right out the gate is, I think, causing people to not do it, or a lot of fear, or create a lot of anxiety. And Brene Brown gave a great podcast called FFTs. She talks about the fucking first time. And like the FFT, like the freaking first time we do anything, it's not going to be as good as that 10th time, that 20th time, that 100th time. And so we have to be willing to like be in the arena and to give it a go. And I think that that's the piece that, doing a virtual workshop is such a beautiful place to practice that. Again, without the overhead and without, there can be a lot of opportunity here for people to find their voice, find their message, find their people, and to put stuff out there again without all of that overhead. So it's like being willing to mess up, being willing to be imperfect, being willing to make mistakes. And I sometimes I say, like, even my worst workshop could change someone's life. It could be that thing that they need to hear in that moment,
It is so true. When I started doing podcasts, I'm on, I think, 77 or something like that now.
Yeah.
I got to be honest, maybe the first 76 were not that great, but but definitely the first 10, oh man, they're bad, and which is fine. They're just totally fine. But I have had so many people then email me saying, oh my gosh, you've changed my life with this one little thing that you said in this first podcast, when I'm thinking, this is so bad, I shouldn't even put it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was listening to Joe Rogan, we know him. He's done, thousands and thousands of podcasts. And he even said his first 100 podcasts were horrible and he's embarrassed about them. So it's a similar type thing. Just get out there and do it.
Yeah. Get out there and do it. And it's like, be in the arena, right?
Be in the arena.
And I think that we can so easily talk ourselves out of it. We can overthink it. We can make it harder than it has to be. We create the illusion of confusion is what I talk about. Like, oh, I don't know what to do a workshop on. Do it on something. What do you care about right now? What fires you up? What's one thing that you can share with people? I don't care what it is. And we think that, oh, there's the right title, the right, topic. And it's like, it doesn't exist,
Maybe the right topic is the topic that lights you up.
Exactly.
That's
exactly.
The right
what's the thing that, like, you could spend hours talking about or geeking out about? Like, share that,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So you do a few different things. I know that you put on like a spectacular conference. I've heard nothing but incredible things about that. Do you do that like once a year or?
Yeah, so I run an event called Camp Yes. That is an adult summer camp for women entrepreneurs, leaders, and change makers. So that's my 4-day big, huge event. It's a summer camp. I rent out this entire retreat center. And it's epic. It's life-changing, super transformational. And so that's my once a year, my big event. And then I also run a 2-day event through the Epic Facilitator Academy, which is more in person and people getting to really practice the skills, get feedback on how they're being and how they're showing up as a facilitator, and getting to be in the room with other people, because they're online with each other, and then they get to come together twice a year in person for that 2-day event. Yeah.
That's cool. And I do know on your website, marliwilliams.com, you have that really great free guide to creating epic workshops, which is just full of information, that we could all use for anything that we're doing.
Exactly. Just creates that whole framework of what are all the things that I need to be thinking about, right? I want to make it easier. The root word of facilitate is facile, which means to make easy. So as a facilitator, it's like, what do I want to make easy for people? And what I want to make easy for people is that anyone can be an epic facilitator. And just because you haven't been taught how doesn't mean you can't do it. And providing the tools, the resources, the skills, the framework, the techniques, the theories, the insights, and the perspective of what does it mean to facilitate transformation? How am I showing up? How am I leading people through an experience rather than delivering a transactional presentation?
Well, then I know some of us also have not even experienced conferences like this ever in our life. So just to see how it's done, like, oh, it can be like this?
Mm-hmm.
Who knew? So just to experience it and open your mind to, oh my God, it could be a different way. We don't have to be bored.
Yes. Yeah. I think that this old model, right, of the sage on the stage, just having this one-sided conversation. Again, I think it's the difference between a transactional presentation and a transformational experience. And those are like these two distinctions of, like, we've all been here in an audience, bored out of our mind, being talked at. And then my whole inquiry over the past decade has been like, what makes an experience transformational? And so much of it is engagement and reflection and integration. So engagement, reflection, and integration, those are like the big pieces that I think make something, it's experiential, and people are active participants in that experience versus passive participants. And so I think that so many of the people that work with me that go through the academy, it just changes the way they think about a workshop or an event or any talk that they're giving, even of they think about, how can I create interaction? How can I create engagement? How can I create opportunities for reflection? What's the big takeaway? What's the action that they're going to take when they walk out of the room? What's going to be different now that they've experienced this?
And how is what they're doing changing the world? There was a book I read maybe a decade ago. It's like, give your talk and change the world, or something like that.
Yeah.
And it really resonated with me that every single time, even if it's for 5 minutes in front of a group, how is what I'm saying elevating the energy of the world?
Yes.
And so just being around you with that great energy too, I think people are like, oh, this is how it works.
Yeah.
You up your own energy, you get yourself balanced, you're self-centered, and then you lead from that place.
Right. And
Yes.
I think that as much as I can teach and provide all of this knowledge and information, I think the biggest piece of feedback that I often get is that I learned so much just from watching you. Just from watching you facilitate, watching you lead, that I can glean from. And that's one of the things I say at the beginning of my events is there's going to be things that I explicitly say, this is what I'm doing and this is why I'm doing it. But there might be things that you hear me or see me do that you're like, wow, I really loved that. And that's the thing of being a role model for people of what's possible and helping them see that. Because oh, it can be this way, or, oh, I can be that big, I can be that bright, I can shine my light, I can be this energetic, or whatever it is, versus holding back, right?
Yes.
Or having to tone it down or chill out, right?
Yes. Yeah. What I love about what you do, Marli, is you're taking, facilitating in events, and it really is about self-transformation and being the best of yourself. So how cool that that's your work, and then the result is all these people you're sending out in the world that changes shit. I love that.
Yeah. And that's the coolest part, is that getting to coach and lead leaders means that there's this huge ripple effect, that the more connected they are to themselves and their message, the more confident they are, the bigger impact they're going to make on every audience that they get to be in front of. And so that is so, so cool. Again, just that ripple effect is so powerful, right? And that gets me fired up.
Well, if you were listening right now and you want to be a better person, a better facilitator, a better presenter, figure out how to manage your energy too, and the energy of the room, and maybe even the Zoom room. I cannot recommend Marli highly enough. So I appreciate you so much being here today and sharing some of your knowledge. It's lovely to talk with you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.